Hello, hello. How are you guys? Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry we're starting a few minutes late, but we're so happy for you to be with us on this beautiful Giving Tuesday. For those of you that are returning from last year, welcome back. This is our Impact series for the year 2022. My name is Angela Hollowell. I am a creative producer here at the East Coast Greenway Alliance. If you're new here, welcome. We appreciate you taking the time to spend your lunch break with us and learn more about the New England region along the East Coast Greenway. For those of you that don't know, the Impact Series is our time at the end of the year to celebrate all the developments that have happened along the East Coast Greenway, to reflect on the progress that we've made, and to get excited and look forward to the new year on what's to come. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guests, Kristine Keeney and Bruce Donald. Thank you so much for joining me today. All right, they're not ready to talk, but that's okay because they're going to have some time to rest and hang out. We're going to do things a little bit differently this year. We are going to play some pre-recorded pieces so they can have some time to rest and really get ready for all your questions. And we know you have so many. While the videos are going on, if you hear about a certain segment or hear about a piece of the state that you want to learn more about, please feel free to drop that question in the comments. We will be getting to all of them at the end. So with that being said, get ready, get your food together, get a nice comfy chair. We're going to kick things off with Kristine.
Keeney. I'm the Northern New England manager for the East Coast Greenway Alliance. I'll be talking about three major developments in the Northern New England and Eastern Massachusetts region. Lots has happened on the Greenway in the last year, especially as we emerge from the pandemic and people are still getting outside and biking and walking. And we have more federal funding than ever, so we're really excited about all the developments that are happening to help complete the Greenway. And I'm going to talk about some of them in Northern New England today, starting with Maine. And one of the major developments is East Coast Greenway Alliance, along with many of our partners that are shown at the bottom of the screen, including the Maine Trails Coalition, Bicycle Coalition of Maine, Casco Bay Trail Alliance, and others, developed the Maine Active Transportation Arterials Plan that will allow all of Maine's 25 largest municipalities to be connected by active transportation. And this is a really big deal because it really outlines a plan for the whole state and how we can realistically achieve this goal if we all work together and we focus on investing in these projects that will create a connected network. And it's been getting a lot of great endorsements and attention. And when we released this plan to the public, it was picked up by some media outlets, including Maine Public, and they shared this story about connecting Maine's 25 biggest communities by 2030. So there's been a lot of really great support for this, and we continue to work as well with Maine Trails Coalition to get the word out about this vision and how we can collaborate and work together to achieve it. And so we think this is a really great vision and a really great point that we can all work together on in the coming years to make a reality with partners like Maine DOT, the governor's office, and other state agencies. Also in Maine, one of the really exciting developments is East Coast Greenway Alliance worked very closely with the Eastern Trail Alliance, as well with Representative Pingree's office to obtain a $700,000 earmark with a just over $200,000 match for 11 miles of design for the Eastern Trail from Kennebunk south to North Berwick. So this is a really substantial section. You can see the orange line is the 11 miles that are going to be designed as part of this project and will allow us to route people off of the on-road route, which is shown here in blue. So it's going to be cutting off a substantial amount of road and helping to complete the East Coast Greenway and the Eastern Trail in southern Maine, which is part of the Blaze the Trail South campaign to continue the Eastern Trail south. So that's really exciting. And we had a press conference with Representative Pingree, as well as the Eastern Trail Alliance, announcing this federal funding, which was well attended, and everyone's really excited to move this forward. And the design should be going out to bid before the end of the year, as well as the highly anticipated Close the Gap project to connect the Eastern Trail between South Portland and Scarborough. We're hoping that'll go out to bid by the end of the year as well, and hopefully construction will start next year. So there's a lot of really great developments happening in Maine overall, but specifically things are really moving forward with the Eastern Trail, and we continue to work with our partners, especially at the federal level, to obtain the funding to keep the momentum going for other sections, as well as obtaining funding for the construction. So moving south to developments in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway is almost the entire section of the envisioned East Coast Greenway in New Hampshire. And as you can see on this slide, it's broken up into several phases. The first phase is phase 1A, which is Portsmouth to Northampton, which is about 8 miles. Right now it is in design and permitting. Actually, just last night, there was a public meeting put on by New Hampshire DOT, and that project is moving forward to construction in the next few years. So we're hopeful by 2023, 2024 that 8-mile section will be constructed. Phase 1B was originally supposed to be part of phase 1, but it had to be broken out because there are some additional drainage challenges, which makes it more challenging from a design perspective, as well as more costly. And so New Hampshire DOT broke it out as a separate piece, so that phase 1A, the 8 miles, could move forward on a more normal construction timeline and not have phase 1B hold it up as these drainage issues are dealt with. So, but still hopeful that section will also be going to construction in 2024. So we will certainly be watching for that. Phase 2 and phase 3 further south in Hampton and in Seabrook are further out. You can see 2030 and 2032 is when those are anticipated to be constructed. And it's definitely further out than we would like to see, but we also are working with our partners at the Rockingham Planning Commission, as well as our congressional partners, and I would really like to see those moved up. And in order to do that, we'll have to work towards finding some funding that might be outside of the typical New Hampshire 10-year plan for transportation projects. So all these things are in progress, and we're going to see a lot of developments in New Hampshire in the coming years. Also, there's work being done that we're participating in to identify trailhead access points. You can see on this slide that there are 23 road crossings, and they've also been broken up by which ones would likely have parking, which ones would be walk or bike only. And so that's all part of the planning process that's going on right now, while the design and construction process is going on with New Hampshire DOT. And as part of that process, we're working with also partners at the National Park Service that are providing some technical assistance, as well as a pro bono group of landscape architects and designers that are helping the communities to identify parcels as well as potential designs for trailhead access. So this is just one example at Banfield Road of what a trailhead access point could look like, including parking for cars, cars, bike parking, other amenities like bathrooms and water fountains and things like that, and then how that could actually provide the access to the rail trail corridor. So this is ongoing work that's happening right now. There was a design charrette last week, and then there's going to be another one. So the public outreach and the design of the trailhead access points and amenities are happening right now, which is really exciting to see alongside the actual trail design. And so in addition to what I talked about in terms of trail access, the landscape architecture design process and outreach is also involving what trailhead kiosks could look like, as well as trail signage. And so this is just a very early example of what it could look like. And in addition to these trail signage and kiosk concepts, the logo that you see here at the top of the sign is actually something that was also developed during this process to specifically brand and represent the New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway alongside the East Coast Greenway. So all of these things are all happening in tandem, and we're really excited about those developments in New Hampshire. And lastly, moving on to exciting developments in Boston, the Border to Boston Trail is really moving along this really great map we've developed along with our partners at the Essex National Heritage Area to show the Border to Boston Trail in the maroon magenta color, as well as projects that are in process. You can see here in the orange sections. And we also were able to work with our partners as well as Representative Moulton's office to obtain a $1.2 million earmark for planning and design of the existing gaps in the Border to Boston Trail. And this funding is going to go specifically to the communities of Newbury, Boxford, Peabody, Salem, and Marblehead. So this is going to provide some funding that is going to fill a gap from the planning and design perspective, which will get us set up to then work towards getting the construction funding for these segments, but it also will eventually physically close the gap in the Border to Boston Trail in several of these communities. So we're really excited about this. We had a press conference only a couple months ago now. This is Representative Moulton, and you can see that it was really well attended, and that we're really excited for this funding to be coming from the federal government, going to Mass DOT, and then they're going to help get that funding out to the communities, which will be working on their various sections for planning and design. There in Maine specifically, there are a few sections of the Casco Bay Trail in Yarmouth and Freeport that are going to be going to construction next year as well. So keep an eye out for that. That's along the Route 1 corridor. And New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway I already talked about, but we're anticipating the construction to start next year. So that's something that we're also excited about for next year. And then lastly, something I didn't mention that I'm really excited about is we are working with Mass DOT as well as the Cape Cod Commission to sign the East Coast Greenway from Bourne on the Cape all the way to Provincetown. And I'm really excited about this project because we had been working with the Cape Cod Commission for going on 3 years now, actually, to plan for the signing of the East Coast Greenway as well as State Bike Route 1. So we worked with them to actually make sure that the two routes were in alignment so that it would facilitate the signing in the future. And then we also applied twice to the Mass Trails program to fund the outreach and the design around the signage project. Unfortunately, on those two occasions, the project wasn't funded, but actually Mass DOT and Mass Trails decided outside of their grant cycles that this was a really great project that was worth funding. And they have brought on Tool Design Group, and we've already had a couple meetings. And this is actually going to be looked at as a pilot project for the Mass DOT new wayfinding design guide. So we're really excited that that they decided that this was an important project, and that we're going to be kind of the guinea pigs to implement the first long distance signing of a bicycle pedestrian route in Massachusetts using their new wayfinding design guide. And not only are they funding the planning and the outreach and the design for these signs, they're actually going to fund the fabrication and the install. So they're really hoping that it's a really tight timeline, but they're hoping to actually have the signs hopefully installed next year, which would be amazing for next season to really help people be able to utilize what's a really, really great route. If you haven't ever biked the length of Cape Cod, definitely check out the East Coast Greenway route there. And hopefully in 2023, you'll see all new wayfinding signs. There's plenty of amazing places to check out on the East Coast Greenway in Maine, New Hampshire, and Eastern Massachusetts. But my favorite season on the Greenway is the summer. I just did actually a bike tour on Cape Cod, all the way out to Provincetown with our colleague Allison Person. So that was really amazing. And then I would also say traveling to Down East Maine in the summer and checking out the Greenway route there. That's an amazing place to spend some time in the summer, especially if it's hotter elsewhere. Usually the weather stays pretty cool down there, so you can really enjoy the summer, but also not be too hot to be out there pedaling. Thank you everyone so much for joining today. Really appreciate your interest in the East Coast Greenway and your support for the work that we're doing. Looking forward to answering your questions and to seeing you out there in the Greenway.
Well, alrighty then. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to go to Cape Cod right now. Well, in the meantime, since travel plans might be a little hard in the middle of a live stream, we're going to go to Bruce and see what's been going on in the southern New England region.
Hello, everybody. It's Bruce Donald. I am the Southern New England manager for the East Coast Greenway Alliance. And I primarily have been working in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Central Massachusetts. And I will talk in depth about Connecticut and Rhode Island and just a little bit about Central Mass. New England, and this is all of it. I'm going to specifically talk, obviously, about Southern New England today. Connecticut, 53% complete. I'm going to talk about all of the projects in process. That totals 62% by about 2026. Rhode Island is currently 68% complete. I will talk about what's going on there. That's going to be almost 85%, a little more than that complete. And then Massachusetts, 45% complete right now. So, Connecticut, there's a lot going on, as you can see, tremendous amount going on. I'm literally going to go through it fast. But something you should note that a lot of people don't know is going on, off of our current route, the Brewster-Danbury connector, the Empire State Trail, which cost over $200 million, has been completed recently and goes now to Brewster through Westchester County from New York City. It's an important connector, and Danbury recently got a good bit of money for the feasibility and design study to get from Danbury out to Brewster, New York, partly on an abandoned railroad corridor. So stay tuned for that. That's very interesting because there's trail in Southbury, there's trail going east directly across, and I think we have a good chance of potentially getting a connector there at some point. You will note that incomplete is the Merritt Parkway Trail going from Greenwich out through Milford. There's something interesting going on there, which is a brand new Fairfield County bike partnership. with Greenwich, Stamford, Norwalk, Bridgeport, Fairfield, and a couple of other towns coming in. That's a working group that meets at least once a month, and they've got a lot of interesting plans going on. So stay tuned for that. I'm just going to keep going up the trail. New Haven Phase 4 is close to done. That is an $11 million project going from Yale University down to the shore, in fact, in New Haven. And I'm really looking forward to that. Look for a ribbon cutting potentially late this year or maybe early in the spring, but that should be done. Going north, Southington was originally just going to be Phase 4. It's now going to be broken in half, Phase 4 and Phase 5. Phase 4 is going to go to bid this winter for construction next year. And then you see Plainville. Plainville is the last major gap in the whole of the East Coast Greenway, going all the way north up into Simsbury. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. You can see that Phase 1, which is Town Line Road in Southington, going north to Norton Park, is going to be in construction next year. It should go to bid this fall. Phase 2 for the year after, and Phase 3 for the year after that. It all could potentially spill over into 26, but it's funded, it's ready to go. Among other things, this Plainville, these phases in Plainville are part of a major federal grant of $16 million that was just received last month. So the money's there. We're really looking forward to that happening. As you go really to the north, you've got the Hartford Connector Gap Design, which is a $500,000 study sponsored by the Capital Region Council of Governments, which is the local, the Greater Hartford MPO. It is Terriffill to the north, Bloomfield as you go down, Hartford to the left of the river, and East Hartford to the right of the river. And this is extremely important because this is a year-and-a-half study that is going to dictate where the East Coast Greenway is going to be built. The remainder of it, those are all gaps in central Connecticut. So a huge study. Continue going east. The remainder of the Hot River Trail, it's the last little piece in Andover, is in fact a large bridge. It's going to replace an existing rail bridge, and there is still some permitting to be done, but they're looking for construction to start in 24. It's a 2-year project because it's really quite a big bridge. The Airline State Park Trail in Putnam, so as you go up, that is in design as we speak. It's almost at 100% design. That's a little less than a mile, and in fact is the last piece of the Airline State Park Trail in Connecticut for the East Coast Greenway to be built. Going down, the Quinnebog River Trail in Killingly, Phase 4 and 5, design should be complete middle of next year, and we are in the process of looking for funds to build those pieces. And then big news, the Moosup Valley State Park Trail in Sterling, which connects to Rhode Island, 5.5 miles, is at 100% design, and my understanding from Connecticut DOT is that it's going to go to bid this winter for the start of construction next year, which is huge news. So I wanted to give you an idea of this connectivity going from New York. So this is Westchester County, and you can see White Plains there. You can see the big, thick blue line is the current on-road route of the East Coast Greenway. It is, obviously cobbled together. It's all signed. It's all passable. A lot of people use it every year, but it's not off-road route, the vast majority of it. Now, that green line you see there is what I was talking about. That's the Empire State Trail. That is complete, almost all complete. Going up to Brewster, and there you see Brewster right there. And there you see Danbury right there. And the Beacon line is in fact abandoned right into the Connecticut line, and then it kind of goes away a little bit. Parts of it have been sold off, parts of it have been reused, but that's that connector I was talking about that's so interesting and could have a dramatic effect on potential routing from New York to Connecticut in the future. Having said that, of course, we've got these routes down here. We've got the routes through White Plains, and we've got the Merritt Parkway Trail, which, as many of you know, it's 37 and a half miles. None of it is currently built, although there was $1.5 million design study done about 6 years ago that by Connecticut DOT. So there is a plan for it. It's just that it hasn't happened. Here's Eastern Connecticut I was talking about, and we don't need to belabor this, but look at how much of this is done. So the Charter Oak is way to the left. There's a little jag there, if you can see it. That is Manchester. That is being completed this year as well. And then you've got the trail. So here's that bridge I was talking about. Over here next to Willimantic, that's still in Columbia. And then there's a little piece in Willimantic, and this is the very bottom of the airline that needs to be completed. And suddenly we've got an enormous amount of Connecticut done. On to Rhode Island. And I'm not going to talk too much about Rhode Island other than you see the Trestle Trail there. That connects to the Moosup Valley Trail, and that's important because suddenly you've got a finished trail sometime around 2025 that is going to bring you from Connecticut into Rhode Island through Coventry, all the way going to the Washington Secondary Trail, which also got funded for 2024. And the hope is that you've got a continuous trail from, well, essentially a little piece of gap that could be done on a little trolley right-of-way way inside Connecticut, beneath the Quinnebog River Trail, and all the way into East Providence, where there's just a couple of gaps. And then you're at the Blackstone River Bikeway, where there's a whole bunch of different projects going on north from Providence to the Massachusetts border. I wanted to throw it on as a slide because it gives you an idea of what Rhode Island DOT does. They're not doing enormous projects. They're doing teeny tiny little projects, and a lot of them. So you notice the Blackstone River Bikeway, notice the Wooney, and then the Washington Secondary, which is the kind of the bottom piece there. All of it is 12.6 miles. 12.6 miles. And that gets you sometime around 2025-26 to over 87% done in Rhode Island. And a little over $31 million currently. Some of those are unbid, so just be aware that price point may change quite dramatically. Note Woonsocket to the north of Rhode Island, and then note that we've got two separate trail opportunities going north to the Mass Central Rail Trail. We are looking forward to working more heavily on the trail to the right through Framingham. And we're in the process now of talking with Massachusetts DOT about making that the primary trail, the spine trail, as we feel very strongly, along with Massachusetts DOT, that corridor is the likely corridor that's going to be the easiest to build completely build out in the next 10 years or so. So you see Framingham there. That connects with the Bruce Freeman Trail, which goes north. It's just not on this map. But the Bruce Freeman Trail, of course, has a remarkable group of advocates and volunteers, and that's a bright spot. Framingham itself has got a bunch of projects in process right now as we speak. So we feel pretty strongly that that's the way to go in Massachusetts, and we will keep you updated on that. My favorite trails in the region, there's a lot of them. I would say, because I've been working on it for so long, I was reminded the other day, 22 years, on the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. So I mentioned some projects on that trail. It is scheduled to be complete for us all the way through the Massachusetts border. In fact, all the way up to Westfield, Massachusetts, sometime around 2025, 2026. Certainly, that trail is interesting to me because it's a personal project for so long, but also because it's kind of unique in the sense that it goes through New Haven, so you're going through an urban setting. It then goes through a series of suburban towns, many of which have built restaurants, breweries, all sorts of fun things to do, literally right on the trail. And then as you get further north, basically kind of north of Avon, Farmington and Avon, you start to get into an area that's much more rural, and it's just fascinating, particularly this time of year. And as you go further north into Massachusetts, it really is rural, and you get a chance to look at some rolling farms and a couple of ponds and a lot of wildlife. Occasionally you'll see a bear, deer, blue herons in the swamps. It's just remarkable. It's one of my favorite places in the world. And then as you go toward Rhode Island, you've got a bunch of different opportunities, both on and off the East Coast Greenway. There's connectors, the Airline State Trail North, the Airline Trail South. As you go into eastern Connecticut, going into Rhode Island, you have to kind of bushwhack a little bit because some of the trail's not done. But the on-road route, of course, obviously is carefully signed and ready to go. So you can go on the on-road route and then get onto the existing pieces of off-road trail going into Providence. And that's another just stunning ride. So I would offer those for you. So thank you so much for joining us today. And it's my pleasure to tell you a little bit about the Southern New England area. And I really look forward to your questions. So fire away.
All righty. Bruce has laid down the gauntlet for your questions. I'm going to bring up Bruce and Kristine now. Hello. How's it going?
Hello.
All right, they're ready to go. They are ready to talk. We have quite a few questions already, but as we're going through these, please feel free to add more to the chat, or if they spark something that you want them to expound on, we're happy to do that as well. Starting here with Elise, I'm going to butcher that last name, Brimmer Nye, from Facebook. What is New Hampshire DOT's level of involvement?
Great question. New Hampshire DOT is absolutely crucial to designing and constructing the East Coast Greenway in New Hampshire. They, first of all, they were the entity that ultimately purchased the railroad corridor from Pan Am. And so now the corridor that will become the trail is in public ownership. That was the first major step. And they also, not only did they fund the purchase of the corridor, they're also funding the design right now of 9+ miles of phase 1 from Portsmouth south to Northampton. And they're also paying for the construction. The majority of that funding is coming from their federal CMAQ funds, but New Hampshire DOT and the state itself had to prioritize this project for those CMAQ funds to be expended on this project. So they're New Hampshire DOT. They're great partners, and we're working with them every step of the way, and they're behind the scenes designing that almost 10-mile section right now. So their involvement is really huge.
Nice. Okay. The next question, or comment rather, this is from H. Charles Aubert. I'm probably butchering that. I'm so sorry if I am. It would be helpful to have a list of the various design teams. The imagery on some of the visuals with the concept drawings were inspirational. I believe this was a comment made during Bruce's presentation. Could you maybe speak to that a little bit, Bruce?
Sure. In the public outreach portion of the project design schedule for many of these projects, uh, renderings, uh, schematics, actual legitimate mapping, and a bunch of other stuff tends to get generated by the consultants for each of these projects. In Connecticut, there is a short list, and actually in every state, quite frankly, there's a short list of approved consultants that tend to be used for bicycle and pedestrian projects. So in Connecticut, you'll see the usual names. There are, VHB, FHI, which is Fitzgerald and Halliday. The list goes on. There are some that are less known. There are some that tends to get more projects. There are some that, in fact, are very well known, but don't too much work in Connecticut, like Alta Planning comes to mind. So, in answer to your question, in the public, venue, there is a lot of stuff, and it tends to get press. I would say that if anybody on this call wants to see specific project documentation, I keep a massive amount of it. So just let me know.
Okay, awesome. Charles also has a second question, and it's concerning the Washington Secondary. He's asking, what did they need on the Washington Secondary?
So that is the gap in Cranston. And Senator Reed was able to find money for it's about half and half for upgrades to the Wooney and this last gap. In fact, in the Washington Secondary, $3.4 million, I believe it was, for that project, and it's very welcome because that piece of trail gets an enormous amount of traffic, and the gap has been problematic for years and years. So it's really nice to see, well, two things. First of all, the trestle trail getting put on the STIP, so that's federal money, right, to match the Moosup Valley Trail, which I talked about in the presentation. But what this does is this gets you essentially from deep within eastern Connecticut, basically all the way into Providence, which is really exciting. I mean, it's rare to have that amount of trail done in between two states. So everyone's looking forward to it.
Awesome. This next question is again from Charles. He's just firing them off. So hopefully some more people will jump in here and ask. But until then, he is asking about supporting I'm going to say this wrong too, Worcester.
Worcester?
Yeah, the East Coast Greenway support for Worcester and Massachusetts. Can you speak a little bit about any collaborations or ongoing community support that's happening between Massachusetts and the East Coast Greenway?
Okay, so this is worth talking about at least briefly, and I can talk offline about this, ad infinitum. But one of the reasons why, in fact, along with Massachusetts DOT, we did indeed move the East Coast Greenway further east to go through Framingham to hook up with the Bruce Freeman, was the fact that there really hasn't been much movement in the Worcester area for a long time now. And even that was recognized by Massachusetts DOT. So as a practical matter, I have two things to say about this. The first one is I will always engage Worcester because we want that trail done. Among other things, it's a major connector to the Mass Central Rail Trail going west, but also, it lifts all boats, right? It connects southeast to Connecticut, to the Snet Trail. There's a lot of interconnectivity on kind of a larger regional scale that we don't want to lose. So while we will work, I think more on this new north-south corridor going directly north from Woonsocket, up north on the Blackstone River Bikeway. We're not going to just orphan those communities, the Uxbridges of the world, and going up north. I hope that answers the question.
I believe it does, and there is a secondary question from a Don Byrne about the relationship between the Worcester. I'm so sorry, I'm butchering this. I'm not from the north. But that route and the Framingham route, and its kind of importance in that area. So I think it'd be good for you guys to maybe discuss offline. I think obviously, as you said, you don't plan on abandoning that by any means, but just that the plans may shift a little bit, and that deserves some future conversation for sure.
Yeah, I would just say this, which is the East Coast Greenway Alliance has been nothing over the last 25 plus years, 30 plus years, but recognizing the communities that are doing work and juggling feasibility. What's buildable within a certain period of time. And I think ultimately that was the conversation that was had. And that's what led us to what we're doing right now.
Awesome. Just wanted to lift up a comment from one Sylvia Ascarelli. She's saying, looking forward to that big stretch in New Hampshire being built by the end of 2024. Never as fast as we like, but thanks for pushing and making it happen. Yes, thank you so much, Sylvia. I understand that you have a pretty popular online platform, Exploring by Bike. So if anybody's getting outside and might want to check out the area, you might want to read a little bit about her experience exploring by bike in the New England region. Thank you guys for joining us today. Charles, there is one quick question as well about the Ride the State event this year. It's a yearly event, as I understand, and it just keeps getting bigger and better every year with more engagement and new faces. So if you could talk a little bit about that event, that would be great for people who maybe haven't had the pleasure yet of attending in Connecticut.
I'd love to. It started out as kind of a labor of love to a certain extent, well over a decade ago now, and it had never been more than kind of 30 people or so. And Steve Mitchell, who is the Connecticut Committee chair, and a bunch of other folks have been very active. I would call out the Farmington Valley Trails Council, the Farmington Canal Rail to Trail Association, and a whole bunch of other people have helped put this together over the years. Last year, we had 154 people. It's 56 miles from New Haven to just inside the Massachusetts border, all on the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, and ostensibly to show the gaps that are still in the trail. So that little piece we talked about in New Haven, northern Simsbury, Simsbury is done. Northern Southington and Plainville, we have a police escort for the riders through those areas. And everyone loves it. This year, Whole Foods, which has a new store in Avon, literally right on the trail, donated all of the food for lunch. And everyone had a fabulous time. We have a motor coach to bring people back to New Haven, should they choose. And it's just fantastic. We love it. And we raised a little over $10,000 last year.
Nice. Incredible amount raised for the Greenway and incredible awareness raised for people who are like, well, where's the money going? Well, now you can see by bike directly how that money will impact Greenway and trail development. We're going to jump back up to northern New England and New Hampshire, just talking about to acknowledge the fact that New Hampshire stands the chance to be the first fully completed state of Greenway trail development. So that's a big push. So that's why we're so excited about New Hampshire and all the things going on there. But there's also some interest as it relates to the Trans-Canada Trail. Debbie West asks, I know there was some collaboration with folks in Canada to connect to the Trans-Canada Trail. What is the status of that partnership?
Great question, Debbie. Yeah, the Trans-Canada Trail, for those who don't know, extends all the way from Nova Scotia to the other side of Canada in British Columbia, which is pretty cool, if you ask me. And the as people might know, the East Coast Greenway currently starts and ends in Calais, Maine, which is right on the border with Canada. And over the border is New Brunswick, Canada. And we have been working with the province of New Brunswick, specifically with their regional planners, to connect the East Coast Greenway to a new trail that they've been working on called the Coastal Link Trail. And the purpose of that trail is to connect the East Coast Greenway from Calais and St. Stephen, New Brunswick to St. John. And the reason that trail ends in St. John is that's where it connects to the Trans-Canada Trail. So there is an international effort underway that we are involved with to connect the Greenway to the Trans-Canada Trail, making it the Greenway and Trans-Canada Trail one of the longest trails in the world. So it's very exciting. And we also work closely with our partners in Canada to learn from them and how they manage and how they develop their trails, specifically to learn things to help us and help our partners, like in state agencies. In Maine, for example, we're trying to work with the state to improve the surface of the 90+ mile Down East Sunrise Trail. So we've worked with our partners in Canada to learn from them and how they manage their natural surface trails, and how much funding they put into them, how often do they do maintenance, so that we can manage our trails better on this side of the border.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. We had some great questions, some great engagement, and we just appreciate all of you again for joining us, taking the time out of your lunch hour to be with us here today. This will not be the last of our Impact Series installment. We will be back Friday with speaking with our representatives and regional coordinators from Virginia, DC, and North Carolina. So as we close out, we just want to thank you guys again. If you would love to donate to these incredible work that we're doing in the New England region, please consider donating to us today for Giving Tuesday. If you would like some merch, some Greenway merch, like this shirt or anything that you've seen in our fabulous videos, like the new shirt Kristine is wearing, please consider buying some merch and just repping the Greenway on your time out on the trails. Thank you again for being with us here today. Kristine, Bruce, would you like to say some sign-offs?
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it, and all of your support for our work and developing the East Coast Greenway.
Yeah, I look forward to this every year. And, anybody who has further questions, don't be a stranger. This is part of what we do, right? Kristine at greenway.org, Bruce at greenway.org. Don't hesitate. This is, we actually like doing this.
Yes, absolutely. Keep them entertained, keep them having fun, because you need fun when you're working on year-long projects on the Greenway. So thank you guys again, and we will see you guys on Friday.